Emily and Daniel Hartman were the couple everyone envied, until the day she uncovered his web of lies, 3 secret lovers, and a life insurance policy taken out in her name. What followed was a chilling unraveling of a perfect marriage, a faked death, and a murder buried deep in the woods. Emily Hartman had the kind of life that most people only dreamed about. Nestled in the charming town of Willow Creek, she and her husband Daniel were seen as the perfect couple. He was a highly respected surgeon at the local hospital, known for his calm demeanor and steady hands. Emily, once an art teacher, now ran a small but successful art studio in the town square, where people came not only to admire her work, but also to chat, relax, and sip coffee. Their 2 children, Lily and Owen, were enrolled in one of the best private schools in the area. On weekends, they went on family hikes, attended church picnics, and posted carefully curated photos of their outings on social media, complete with warm filters and loving captions. To friends, neighbors, and even their own families, Emily and Daniel were the very picture of marital bliss. But over the past few months, subtle cracks had begun to appear in their seemingly flawless life. At first, it was just small things. Daniel coming home later than usual, blaming emergency surgeries or paperwork. Then came the locked phone. Emily noticed he had changed his passcode, and when she asked about it, he casually dismissed it as a hospital-wide security update. He was still kind, still attentive with the kids, but with her there was a growing distance. They no longer lingered in conversation. Their laughter had faded into routine pleasantries. When Emily reached for him in the night, she often found the bed beside her cold. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while organizing family photos on their shared laptop, Emily stumbled upon a folder she didn't recognize. It was tucked inside a directory labeled Work Documents, a place she had never thought to check before. She clicked, expecting to find medical charts or hospital forms. Instead, hundreds of images loaded onto the screen. Photos of Daniel with other women, smiling, embracing, even kissing. Hotel rooms with identifiable backgrounds. Dinner tables set for 2. Some pictures showed Daniel in tropical locations, standing beside women in swimsuits. Emily blinked, stunned, her hand trembling as she clicked through each image. She hadn't been on a vacation with Daniel in over a year. As the rain tapped against the window behind her, Emily sat frozen, staring at the screen. For a long time, she didn't cry. Instead, her mind raced through 1,000 questions. Who were these women? How long had it been going on? Was it just one affair, or were there several? What about their children? What about their life? She closed the folder and sat back, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her first instinct was denial. Maybe this was old. Maybe it was before their marriage. Maybe it was some kind of mistake. But as she opened the browser history, the timeline became painfully clear. The affairs were recent, some photos were time-stamped just days earlier. The betrayal was not only real, it was ongoing. Over the next few hours, Emily poured through the laptop's contents. She found saved messages, reservations at hotels in nearby cities, even a scanned receipt for a necklace, one she had never seen. The name on the receipt matched one of the women in the photographs. She opened their shared bank account and began reviewing transactions, spa visits, high-end clothing stores, restaurants she had never heard of, all paid for using their savings. As night fell and the house grew quiet, Emily sat alone in her studio, the truth pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't shake. Her chest ached. But still she didn't cry. Instead, something colder settled in. A numbness. A resolve. She knew she couldn't confront Daniel yet, not until she had all the answers, not until she understood just how far the betrayal went. She began printing out what she had found, labeling folders, organizing digital backups. She hid a flash drive inside a jar of paintbrushes, Her instincts told her this wasn't just about infidelity. It was something darker. There were too many lies, too many secrets, and the man she had trusted with her life was now a stranger, walking through their home, smiling at their children, sleeping beside her with lies buried under his skin. What Emily didn't know then was that this discovery was only the beginning. The truth she had uncovered would unravel not just her marriage but her entire world, and lead her down a path from betrayal to something far more dangerous. Emily didn't confront Daniel right away. Her first instinct was to stay quiet, to observe, to collect. She knew there was more to the story than just a few photos and suspicious transactions. What she had seen on the laptop was only the surface of something much deeper, and possibly more dangerous. If Daniel had managed to keep this secret life hidden for so long, she needed to be careful. She needed to be smart, and most of all, she needed to be safe, for herself and for the children. 2 days after the discovery, she contacted a private investigator. His name came recommended by a friend of a friend, someone discreet and experienced with marital surveillance. Emily met him in a small cafe on the other side of town, using the excuse of a supply run for her art studio. She brought a folder containing screenshots of the photos and financial statements. She didn't know how far this would go, but she had to start somewhere. The investigator agreed to take the case and assured her he would begin immediately, focusing on Daniel's work schedule, whereabouts, and communications. The following weeks were some of the longest of Emily's life. Each day she played the role of the unsuspecting wife. She packed the children's lunches, hosted art classes at her studio, smiled at neighbors, and asked Daniel about his day over dinner. Every moment of interaction with him felt like a performance. She listened for slips in his stories, watched for inconsistencies in his routine. Her heart pounded when he touched her shoulder or kissed her goodnight. She flinched at his voice even though it remained calm and familiar. The man she had loved for over a decade now seemed like a stranger wearing her husband's face. The investigator sent regular updates, each one more disturbing than the last. Within a week, he had followed Daniel to the home of a woman named Monica, a real estate agent who lived in a modern townhouse just outside the city. Daniel visited her twice, staying for hours each time. Then there was another woman, Samantha, who worked as a physical therapist at a nearby clinic, and another, Lisa, who worked in event planning. 3 women, 3 separate lives. None of them knew about each other, and none of them appeared to know about Emily. But it didn't stop there. The investigator pulled bank statements that Emily hadn't seen. Daniel had opened at least 2 additional accounts in his name only, transferring money regularly from their joint savings. A pattern began to emerge: lavish spending, frequent cash withdrawals, expensive gifts. It wasn't just infidelity. Daniel was slowly removing himself from their financial life, preparing for something. It was as if he was getting ready to disappear. Then, another discovery changed everything. The investigator found documents related to a life insurance policy Daniel had taken out on Emily just 3 months earlier. It had a value of $2.5 million and named Daniel as the sole beneficiary. Emily had no knowledge of the policy. Her signature, supposedly included on the paperwork, was forged. Her stomach dropped when she heard the news. The betrayal had reached a terrifying new level. Was Daniel planning to hurt her? Was she just an obstacle to his escape? The possibility of violence hadn't crossed her mind until that moment. Suddenly, everything seemed urgent. Every quiet night, every business trip, every moment alone with him felt like a potential threat. Emily began taking precautions. She changed the security codes on her studio and kept a small audio recorder hidden in her car. She began sending files to a cloud drive under a fake name. She visited a lawyer under the guise of a gallery consultation, quietly inquiring about divorce proceedings. The attorney advised her to gather as much documentation as possible before filing, and to avoid alerting Daniel until everything was ready. A confrontation could provoke him. If he sensed that she knew, he might accelerate whatever plan he had in motion. By now, Emily was living two lives. One as the devoted wife smiling through dinners and pretending to believe every story Daniel told. The other as a woman gathering evidence, documenting everything, building a case. The emotional toll was overwhelming, but adrenaline kept her focused. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. The investigator sent a set of surveillance photos showing Daniel at a bank with a woman Emily didn't recognize. They weren't affectionate, but their body language was familiar. The woman handed Daniel a folder. Later, the investigator confirmed she was a notary who had helped process property documents, papers that included a transfer of ownership for a condo in Florida. Daniel had secretly purchased a property using funds siphoned from their accounts. A new home, a new life. Emily realized then that Daniel wasn't just cheating, he was vanishing piece by piece, building a future without her, without their children. And he was doing it with a smile on his face and lies in every word. The man she had trusted, built a life with, had become something else entirely. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the betrayal or the silence behind it. Emily knew her time was running out. Every night that Daniel returned home and smiled across the dinner table felt like a quiet countdown. The calm before something unspoken and possibly irreversible. After learning about the hidden condo, the forged insurance policy, and the multiple women, she no longer felt like she was just dealing with a cheating spouse. She felt like she was living with a stranger, someone capable of dangerous things. She acted quickly but carefully. With the help of her lawyer, she began preparing divorce documents. Everything had to be timed perfectly. They scheduled the filing for a Friday, just after Daniel was due to leave town for a medical conference. That would give her the weekend to finalize the custody request and secure the accounts. Her lawyer also referred her to a security consultant who taught her how to protect her digital information, her location, even how to sweep her car for tracking devices. Emily felt foolish doing it like she was in a spy movie, but she followed every instruction. Nothing felt too paranoid anymore. She moved half of their remaining savings into a new bank account in her name only, and changed the passwords to every account Daniel didn't already control. She backed up every piece of evidence she had collected, emails, photos, messages, surveillance footage, and gave one copy to her lawyer, another to her sister out of state. She installed new locks on the studio and told her employees she was going away for a few days on a retreat. The plan was to get the children to her parents' house that weekend and confront Daniel after the divorce papers were served. She never got the chance. On Thursday evening, Emily returned home from the studio to find Daniel sitting at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. He didn't look angry or upset. He looked relaxed. He said he had canceled his trip. Emily's heart dropped. She knew then that something was wrong. She kept her composure, acting surprised but unfazed. She talked about her day, mentioned needing to call her sister, and excused herself upstairs. She took her phone with her and locked the bathroom door. Her fingers trembled as she texted her lawyer. "He's home. Something's wrong. I think he knows." That night she barely slept. She kept the bedroom door slightly ajar and turned on a noise app on her phone, pretending it helped her sleep. In truth, she wanted to hear every sound in the house. At one point she thought she heard Daniel downstairs opening and closing cabinets, but when she looked, he was gone. The next morning he left early, claiming he had to meet a colleague for breakfast. She waited 10 minutes after he left, then rushed to check the safe in their closet. It was empty. The family passports, a stack of emergency cash, and an old revolver that Daniel kept locked away. Gone. That same morning, his car was found abandoned on a rural road just outside of Willow Creek. A jogger noticed it parked near a hiking trail and called it in. The keys were still in the ignition. Inside, police found Daniel's wallet, a half-drunk bottle of water, and a blood-stained jacket. There were footprints in the mud leading into the woods, but they stopped near a shallow stream. No body was found, no sign of a struggle. The scene looked staged, but nothing could be proven. Daniel was officially listed as missing. News spread quickly. Friends and neighbors were shocked. Some thought he had been kidnapped. Others believed he'd taken his own life. The local news stations ran stories about the respected surgeon who vanished without a trace. Emily played the part of the grieving, confused wife. She gave one brief interview, holding back tears and saying she hoped he would be found soon. Behind the scenes, her lawyer pushed for the court to recognize him as missing and allow her to secure what was left of their assets. 3 weeks later, everything changed again. A hiker discovered a decomposing body buried under loose soil about 5 miles from where Daniel's car had been found. At first, everyone assumed it was Daniel, but when the coroner finished the examination, the truth emerged. It wasn't him. It was a man named Jeff Collins, a handyman with a minor criminal record who had done odd jobs for one of the women Daniel had been seeing. The man had been shot in the chest at close range. In his back pocket was Daniel's wallet and ID. For a brief moment, it seemed like Daniel might be dead after all, murdered, maybe by someone who wanted to steal his identity. But then came the final twist. Surveillance footage was uncovered from a gas station near the area. It showed Daniel and the handyman together, smiling and carrying supplies. Only Daniel was seen leaving. Suddenly, everything became clear. Daniel had faked his death. He had killed the handyman and left the body behind to take the fall. Emily was stunned, terrified, and alone. The man she had once shared a life with had become a fugitive, and she had no idea what he would do next, or if he would ever come back. The town of Willow Creek was still reeling from the discovery in the woods. For weeks, headlines buzzed with theories about Daniel Hartman's disappearance and the body of Jeff Collins, the handyman found in his place. The gruesome twist that Daniel had likely staged his own death shocked the community. Friends who once praised his surgical skills now whispered about hidden rage, fraud, and a life few had seen coming. The police launched a formal manhunt, placing Daniel on the National Registry of Fugitives, but with no clear trail to follow, their efforts quickly hit a wall. Emily, meanwhile, was caught in a storm of her own. While investigators hunted for her husband, she became the center of quiet speculation. Neighbors looked at her differently, some with sympathy, others with suspicion. The media painted her in shifting tones, the grieving wife, the betrayed woman, and sometimes the possible accomplice. Reporters camped outside her home. Journalists called her studio pretending to be potential clients. She ignored them all, determined to shield her children from the chaos. Every morning she took Lily and Owen to school as usual, wearing dark glasses to avoid the flash of cameras. Then one morning, nearly a month after the discovery in the woods, Emily received a letter. It had no return address and was postmarked from a small coastal town in Mexico. Inside was a single photograph. Daniel, clearly alive, standing near a white sand beach with his arm wrapped around a woman Emily didn't recognize. They looked relaxed, even happy. On the back of the photo, written in neat block letters, were 5 chilling words. "You can't bury the past." Emily's hands shook as she stared at the photo. Her first instinct was disbelief. Was it real? Had someone edited it to torment her? But as she examined the edges and texture, she knew it was genuine. His face was unmistakable, and the woman beside him, mid-30s, dark hair, light skin, looked vaguely familiar. Emily couldn't place her, but she had a feeling this wasn't a new relationship. She took the letter and photo straight to the police. Investigators immediately began tracking the source. They identified the town in Mexico using a store sign visible in the background. But by the time they contacted local authorities, there was no sign of Daniel or the woman. Hotel records showed someone using a fake ID had checked in briefly around the time the letter was sent, but the trail ended there. It was clear Daniel had moved again. Still, the letter proved one thing without question. He was alive, and he was watching. The investigation took another turn when forensic experts examined the envelope. They found a partial fingerprint inside, one that belonged to Emily. The detail was strange. She had never touched the inside of the envelope, and the only way her print could be there was if she had placed the photo inside herself. Investigators began quietly reopening the case from another angle. Had Emily known more than she let on? Was she a victim, or had she helped Daniel in some way? They began reviewing her digital activity, requesting access to her emails and text messages. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then they discovered several deleted messages from a secure messaging app. Conversations between Emily and a man known for having connections to criminal networks. He was flagged in several states as a possible contract killer, though never formally charged. The messages were brief and vague but included discussions about payment, timelines, and removing a problem. It was enough to raise serious concern. The police obtained a warrant and searched Emily's home and studio. Hidden inside an old art supply box, they found a second phone, one not linked to her name. On it were encrypted conversations and photos of Daniel's affair partners. Some of the photos were ones the private investigator had taken. Others were newer, likely taken by Emily herself. The existence of this phone shifted the case completely. Emily was no longer just a betrayed wife. She was a person of interest. Then came the most incriminating discovery: a memory card from a trail camera, located in the woods near where Jeff Collins' body had been found. It had been placed by a wildlife enthusiast tracking deer migrations. On it was footage from the day before the murder. It showed Emily walking into the woods carrying a shovel and a duffel bag. She was alone. Her alibi had been that she was at the studio all day. Now, that statement was under serious doubt. Police arrested Emily quietly, away from the press. She maintained her innocence, insisting she had gone into the woods to retrieve something Daniel had hidden, unaware of what he had done. She claimed she was scared, desperate, and only trying to protect her children. But the evidence continued to mount, and investigators weren't convinced. As her trial approached, public opinion turned sharply. What had started as a story of betrayal and escape was now a tangled web of lies, possible conspiracy, and a woman who may have known far more than she ever admitted. The only person who truly knew everything was still out there, free, and watching. Emily sat alone in the small, windowless courtroom, her expression unreadable. The media frenzy had died down slightly, but the interest in her case remained high. Journalists lined the hallway, hoping for a glimpse of her, a quote, a reaction. But she offered none. Throughout the trial, she remained composed, almost cold, as if the woman everyone thought they knew had been replaced by someone entirely different. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated deception, a woman scorned who had quietly plotted her revenge not through emotion but through planning and precision. They detailed how Emily had gathered evidence, tracked Daniel's affairs, and moved money around in secret. The deleted messages with the alleged hitman were presented in court. Though the defense argued that nothing in the messages explicitly referred to murder, the implication was clear. The encrypted language, mentions of payment, and discussions about timing didn't help her case. Prosecutors suggested that while Emily may not have pulled the trigger, she was aware of Daniel's plan to fake his death and likely helped orchestrate the burial and staging of the scene. Then came the most damning evidence: the trail camera footage. Seeing her on video walking into the woods with a duffel bag and shovel, the same area where Jeff Collins was later found, broke any remaining sense of her innocence for the jury. Emily's explanation, that she had gone to the location to retrieve something Daniel had hidden, sounded vague and too convenient. There was no proof of what she had allegedly recovered. She said Daniel had threatened her, that she feared for her life and did what she was told to survive. But no text, recording, or witness backed up that claim. The jury didn't take long. Emily was found guilty on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and insurance fraud. While she wasn't charged with the actual killing, the weight of her involvement was enough to sentence her to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. She didn't cry when the verdict was read. She didn't react at all. The sentencing made national headlines. Some still viewed Emily as a victim pushed too far, a woman driven to the edge by betrayal and fear. Others believed she was much more calculating than she let on, that she had worn the mask of the perfect wife until it no longer served her. Either way, the story captivated the public, because in Emily's silence, people saw their own darkest curiosities reflected back at them. Daniel Hartman was never found. After the verdict, a tip came in from a man in Belize who claimed to have seen someone matching Daniel's description, managing a small fishing charter. Another claimed he had been spotted in Colombia under a new name, but none of the sightings were confirmed. Daniel had vanished into the world with skill, planning, and possibly assistance. If he had access to money and fake documents, and he certainly had time to prepare, it was entirely possible he would never be found. Back in Willow Creek, the house Emily once shared with Daniel was sold. The art studio was shuttered permanently. Lily and Owen were placed in the custody of Emily's sister, far away from the town that now associated their family name with scandal and death. Their lives, once full of routine and security, had been uprooted by secrets they were too young to fully understand. Years later, true crime documentaries, books, and podcasts dissected every angle of the story. Some focused on Daniel's manipulations, his secret affairs, the money he siphoned away. Others focused on Emily's transformation, from loyal wife and mother to someone who may have quietly conspired in a murder. Still others explored the psychological damage of betrayal, how deception can turn love into something unrecognizable. The case remained one of the most complex and debated criminal mysteries in the region's history. Emily, now a prisoner behind gray walls and high fences, rarely spoke to the media. In her one interview, conducted 5 years into her sentence, she offered no apologies and gave no answers. She simply said, "I loved him. I really did. But love doesn't always survive the truth." It was the only statement she ever made about what really happened. To this day, no one knows whether she was a victim, a mastermind, or something in between. And somewhere far from Willow Creek, a man walks free, carrying the final secret of how it all really ended.